This just in, Republican Georgia State Senator Colton Moore is moving to impeach Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis for her actions against former President Donald Trump. Moore said in a statement, "I'm not going to sit back and watch as radical left prosecutors weaponize their elected offices to politically target their opponents. As a Georgia State Senator, I am officially calling for an emergency session to review the actions of Fani Willis."
Meanwhile, Scott McAfee has been assigned to preside over Donald Trump's case in Georgia. Hailing from the Peach State, the 34-year-old was given the Herculean task of overseeing the blockbuster trial against Trump and his 18 co-defendants after only having occupied the bench for 6 months. Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp appointed McAfee back in 2021, and in February of this year, he became a Fulton County Superior Court judge. And though he's new to the bench, his lengthy resume boasts having been a prosecutor and state inspector general in the state.
And while all eyes will be on Georgia the next few months, Arizona could be next in line to indict Trump. According to Fox 10 Phoenix, former governors Jan Brewer and Doug Ducey, both Republicans, expect that this could happen, especially because of a video showing fake electors signing false electoral college documents declaring Trump the winner of the 2020 election. Documents in Trump's Georgia indictment make several references to these events in Arizona, which prosecutors used to help support a racketeering charge. So a couple things to process. Obviously, I don't think the impeachment of the prosecutor is going to go anywhere. This judge, people are just kind of noting that he's relatively, not just relatively, he is young. He's new to the bench, 34. I remember last week when I was a wee 34-year-old. So there's that. And but everybody says he's a very professional, knowledgeable person.
Yeah. So people will make hay out of these judge selections one way or the other. In most cases, and certainly in this case, he was randomly assigned. He was a Brian Kemp appointee, which in yesteryear would mean that, okay, he's a Republican guy, what's there to be mad at? But in a world where there are two Republican parties and Brian Kemp is on the wrong side of the Republican Party to many folks because he has committed the crime of believing that Biden duly won the 2020 election. I think there are conservatives who are frustrated that he is the one overseeing this case. I also saw some folks noted, there was a New York Times story, in fact, that noted that he once worked under Fani Willis, which is understandable given that he previously worked as a prosecutor in the state. So people want to see conspiracies everywhere. I don't know that there is one here. I think the conspiracy people should be keeping their eye on is the one that Trump is alleged to have engaged in with 18 co-conspirators, where he endeavored to get Republicans across the country to sign on to fake slates of electors.
So the Georgia indictment does make reference to events in Arizona. So everybody's wondering if Arizona will be the next shoe to drop. What's interesting about the situation in Arizona is that such a case would be brought by the Attorney General of Arizona, who is a Democrat, because the Democrat won in the midterms in 2022. Remember, in this Arizona race where Republicans...
Are you sure, Robbie?
Where Republicans blew, were widely expected to have a better time than they did, and their governor candidate, Kari Lake, lost. Their Senate candidate, Blake Masters, lost. Their Attorney General candidate, Abraham Hamida, lost. Those three individuals leaned very aggressively. They were endorsed by Trump. They courted Trump. They had Trump's approval because they were very much leaning into the stolen election stuff, which lost them in a state that elects a lot of Republicans generally. The Attorney General in particular that office has not been held by a Democrat since 2006. And the Republican candidate in 2022 lost by 510 votes, just 510 votes. So there would be no indictment of Trump if that office was held by a Republican, or by this Republican. And so it's another example of Trump kind of like shooting himself in the foot because these candidates all lost. And if like this guy had gotten 511 more votes, there would definitely be no indictment in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel, this is very subjective, obviously, but that in the past few weeks since these last two indictments that are relating specifically to the issue of the efforts to overturn the 2020 election, that there has been a shift. We're seeing that polls are all over the place. There's a new New Hampshire poll that shows that people, I think Tim Scott is even ahead of Ron DeSantis in New Hampshire. He's spending a lot of money in the state, so that might not be indicative of anything more than just having exposure.
Chris Christie was up in some poll.
I think that was the same New Hampshire poll.
Well, DeSantis is putting everything into Iowa right now. That's his. He's spending a lot of time there. I've seen reporting, even mainstream reporting, that he's hitting his stride and he's resonating with people. Pollings haven't necessarily borne that out yet, but you never know.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that it feels as though there's a little bit of a loosening of a grip on the Republican candidates, feeling the need to have such a fidelity to the Donald Trump stole the election narrative, and the public as a whole, the Republican base, feeling the need to defend every action here. And I do think it's because these cases are resurfacing the aspects of the alleged conspiracy that are so much more compelling than the idea that a guy with horns on his head entering into Congress was independently going to change the outcome of the election. I mean, you're getting the kind of stories like the ones that came out of your home state in Michigan, where the Republicans picked to put forward the slate of electors, the fake slate of electors there, because of state rules that require the electors to be certified in the state house, I believe. There was like a plot to stay overnight and to hide in the building. I mean, stuff that obviously evinces an understanding that they were doing something illegal and wrong, and that they had to hide and literally, in the cover of night, put together these documents. Allegedly, according to these indictments, at the direction of Donald Trump, Eastman, and the rest of these co-conspirators. So once you're talking in those terms, that Donald Trump was literally plotting with Republicans in these 7 states around the country to create confusion with these documents that will enable them to shift the election results from the people in the states across America to the House of Representatives, who could then hand it over to Donald Trump, it seems like a lot more than just, I don't like Donald Trump, and I think that he's doing an insurrection.
I mean, there's still people, Carrie Lake, I saw tweeting yesterday, calling for all the other Republicans to drop out in solidarity with Donald Trump. That's a sentiment I see a lot. Pointing to the polling numbers and saying it's over. Trump's up like 35 or 40 points right now. It's interesting to compare to previous campaign cycles. So at this point in 2015, Trump was also ahead. He was only ahead by like 10 points, and he eventually got the nomination. In the Romney election, at this point in the campaign, Romney was also had front runner status by about 10 points. But in the 2008 election, at this point, so in 2007. Rudy Giuliani was leading right now. He was about 10 points ahead of everybody else, and obviously John McCain eventually became the nominee. So
he managed to do, even though he lost that election, he managed to do some really important things with his career, including becoming one of the indicted co-conspirators in this case against Donald Trump. He became Donald Trump's core legal team after all of the lawyers in the Justice Department were rejected by Trump for telling him repeatedly that he had lost the election, and he kept doing forum shopping, allegedly, to find an attorney that would agree with him. He eventually found one in Rudy Giuliani, and now they are sharing responsibility for these alleged crimes. There was a story, I think, that came out yesterday about Rudy Giuliani seeking support with his legal fees from Donald Trump, given that he ostensibly put himself on the line to help him get elected.
Yeah, Trump has not been particularly interested in paying those.
Is not generous. And so here's the thing. Donald Trump, I wonder if the public will start to see Donald Trump differently. And if I were the Democrats, instead of kind of dancing on Trump's grave the way that Hillary Clinton did, I would try to frame it this way. Donald Trump misrepresented the status of the 2020 election to his supporters. He told them to come to the Capitol, where some of them broke the law and committed crimes that they're now having to serve time for, while he gets off innocently. People really believed him when he said that they were doing something noble, just, and would be protected if they fought for what Trump said was true, which is that he had rightfully won the election. And now Donald Trump has led all these other less sympathetic people, I would argue, because they are rich and powerful and should have been able to use their own reasoning skills, but folks like Rudy Giuliani, who is also hanging out to dry. So there's a question before the American people, which is, do they believe that Donald Trump, based on his behavior, wouldn't do the same to them when he's in the role of having to protect them and their interests as the leader of the United States of America?
Well, we will see. We'll continue following the 2024 presidential race, and we'll have more Rising right after this.